All right, here's the deal. In the world of video editing, there's a general rule that basically states the less people notice the work you're doing, the better your work is, which puts a lot of pressure on editors because the number one place for a YouTube video or a movie or a TV show to fall apart is simply in the cut between two pieces of footage. If you cut a few frames too early or too late, then you're gonna jar the audience out of the story and completely ruin their viewing experience. And yes, I know that sounds over the top and maybe a little bit dramatic, but it really is 100% true. Luckily, editors have come up with a few tricks over the years to help with that, including a type of cut that when used properly will make every single transition seem like a seamless flow between clips. It's kind of like the Swiss Army knife of cuts, and we're gonna talk about that today. It's called the match cut. Now, a match cut is simply a cut where an element from clip number one is shared with clip number two or vice versa. Now, there's three different types of match cuts and a few different uses for them. We're gonna go over all of those today, starting with the different types. A graphic match cut is simply a cut where there's a physical element from clip number one being shared with clip number two. Now, this could be something as literal as a person's face or as abstract as a similar shape. For a literal version, we should take a look at Citizen Kane's opening scene where we're continuously crossfading and getting closer and closer to the castle. You can notice that the window stays exactly the same, which just makes everything a seamless transition. It's perfect. A more abstract version of this is in 2001: A Space Odyssey, where the monkey gorilla thing throws the bone up in the air, and as it's coming back down, we cut to this spaceship, which is a very similar shape as the bone. Now, both of these examples are graphic match cuts, but they're used for very different purposes. We're going to talk about that later in the video. For now, let's move on to the motion match cut, which is a lot like the graphic match cut, except for, it deals with motion. Now, some of you may know motion match cuts as something called cutting on the action, and that is definitely a type of motion match cut, but really all it is where the motion of cut one, clip one, is matched with the motion of clip number two. For an example, we can take a look at the training montage from Rocky IV, the whole Hearts on Fire scene. If we watch this scene through, you'll see that the motion of each clip is matched with another clip. For example, when he's jumping rope and then we cut to his feet, you can see the motion is exactly the same. Or when he's doing those inverted sit-ups, you can see that he's going up and then it cuts to him from a different angle, still continuing that motion. Those are motion match cuts. Another example of the motion match cut is in Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. And by the way, actually, that whole movie is just a masterclass on match cuts. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend checking it out with this video in mind, because it's really going to give you examples of everything that I'm talking about. But the particular cut that I'm talking about is when they're at band practice and the guitar player walks by Scott Pilgrim. Scott Pilgrim says something, and then when the guitar player turns around, we cut to a completely different location a little bit later in the day. Again, the Rocky IV scene and the Scott Pilgrim versus the World scene are motion match cuts that are used for completely different purposes. But before we talk about the different uses for a match cut, let's talk about our third and final match cut type, which is the audio match cut or sound bridge, which is simply when two adjoining clips share the same sound or at least similar sounds. For example, thunder to an explosion during war times or vice versa. Now, audio match cuts, sound bridges can be used in all sorts of places, but my favorite example as far as movies are concerned is Mean Girls. Now, for those of you who have seen Mean Girls, you may remember a scene where Regina George figures out that the bars that she's been eating, which she were told was diet bars, actually were making her gain weight, and she lets out this blood-curdling scream. But what you may not have noticed, because that match cut is so powerful, is that that scream that Regina lets out is actually brought through another 2 or 3 cuts. That scream, that sound, is the sound bridge. It is the audio match cut. It is bringing one particular sound through a bunch of different cuts to tie them all together and make it seamless. Another great example of an audio match cut or sound bridge is the simple J and L cut, which allows the audio from one clip to overlap the audio from another clip. In fact, that's how I cut my videos together. Every time I need to make a cut, I make it so the end of the last word of clip number 1 is overlapping the beginning of clip number 2, and that makes every cut seem a little bit more seamless and a little bit just more, the flow is better. One last thing about audio match cuts, because I know somebody's gonna ask, but yes, dialogue can absolutely be used as a sound bridge. For example, in Silence of the Lambs, where Clarice is talking about your self-storage, and while she's talking about that, it cuts to a shot of the your self-storage sign. Wow, that is really hard to say.
I figured he's from Baltimore, and I looked in the phone book, and there's a your self-storage facility right outside of downtown Baltimore, sir.
So there you go. You've got your graphic match cut, your motion match cut, and your audio match cut. Now, like I said, there are a few different use cases for these, a few different reasons why you would want to use a match cut. The first is Spatial, which is a match cut that's used to transport people from one location to another. The other is Temporal, which allows you to transport people through time. And then the other is Metaphorical, which kind of allows you to make some kind of social commentary without actually saying the words. That motion match cut that I mentioned earlier in Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, where they're in band practice and then they're later on in the day outside of a venue where they're going to be playing, that is another spatial match cut. It's also arguable that that's a temporal match cut, but we're gonna use a different example for that. And that example is from Titanic, where you've got the underwater shot of the boat and you're panning around it, and then all of a sudden the boat's coming to life. It's no longer sunk. There's people all over the place. That is a temporal match cut. It is a graphic and motion match cut being used in a temporal setting. You're transporting from the current time when the Titanic is at the bottom of the ocean to way back when the Titanic was actually making its journey. And then for an example of a metaphorical match cut, we can take a look again at that cut from 2001: A Space Odyssey, where we're going from way back in the day when it was monkeys and gorillas and all that stuff, all the way to the future. And that's kind of not only a spatial match cut and a temporal match cut, but also a metaphorical match cut, because it's kind of making a commentary on human beings' reliance on technology. So there you go. You've got your 3 different types of match cuts. You've got your 3 different use cases for them. And when you put them all together, you've got this all-in-one thing that you can basically use in every scenario. Now, the match cut isn't technically a part of this 6 rules of editing, but when you use it in conjunction with the 6 rules of editing, then you've got yourself a perfect video. Now, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, definitely check out this video right here. And for more tools, tips, and tricks that'll make you a better video editor, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that bell so you don't miss anything. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.